to the third episode of Dolly at 80. I sure hope you enjoyed the first two episodes. Now y'all come on up here and set a spell. Pour yourself something sweet, maybe some sweet tea, or maybe if the day's been a little long, a little something stronger. Because tonight, we're finishing up our series on Dolly. Now, there comes a point in every Southern story when the tale stops being about how high somebody climbed and starts being about what they left behind when they got there. That's where Dolly found herself as the 1980s were winding down. Not standing at the edge of her career, not slowing down, but standing at a place where success turns into something deeper, something steadier, something that lasts. The 1980s had been a strange kind of decade for her. On the outside, it looked like nothing but triumph. Movies like 9 to 5 and Still Magnolias, sold-out tours with Kenny Rogers, television appearances, chart-topping records. But on the inside, it had been harder than most folks ever knew. Her health had taken a beating, suffering from female problems and weight issues. The movie Rhinestone had left her with a financial disappointment. She went through a deep bout of depression, and she experienced betrayal that shook her to the core. Still, she kept going, still showing up with that big smile and that even bigger heart. In 1987, she tried something bold. She brought back the old-fashioned variety show with a brand new TV series called Dolly. It had a bigger budget than her old show from the 1970s, beautiful sets, glamorous gowns, and guest stars like Oprah Winfrey, Delta Burke, and the band Alabama. On paper, it should have been a hit. But in her own book, Dolly later admitted the writing just didn't fit her soul. They had her dressed in fine evening gowns, singing old standards like Someone to Watch Over Me. Those were beautiful songs, sure enough, but they weren't her songs. She hadn't grown up with them. They didn't feel like home. The show lasted only one season, not because of the lack of talent, but because it never quite found the chemistry it needed. Dolly wrote that the mid-80s was the lowest points of her emotional life, but she didn't stay there. By the time the 1980s ended, she had made a decision. She was ready for a new decade, and that decision would be rewarded in a way nobody, not even Dolly herself, could have imagined. Now, before we even truly step into the 1990s, we've got to stop right here and talk about 1992, because this is where one of the most remarkable moments in music history came calling. Whitney Houston recorded I Will Always Love You for the movie The Bodyguard. Now, folks, when the song came out, it didn't just do well. It didn't just climb the charts. It exploded. 14 weeks at number one. One of the best-selling singles of all time. A performance so powerful it could stop you dead in your tracks. People would hear those first quiet notes and feel something rise up in their chest before Whitney even opened her mouth. And here's the part that tells you everything you need to know about Dolly Parton. She wrote that song, she owned the publishing, and it was one of the most personal, emotionally rooted songs she had ever created. She had already taken it to number one twice, first in 1974 and again in 1982 when she re-recorded it for the Best Little Chicken House in Texas. But when Whitney's version hit, the royalty checks came in so big and so fast that Dolly would later laugh and say, "I made enough money off that song to buy Dollywood." And she also said, "I made enough money to buy Graceland." That second line wasn't just a joke. It was a little wink back to the moment years earlier when she turned Elvis Presley down because Colonel Tom Parker had told her that if Elvis recorded the song, she'd have to give up half of the publishing rights. But even with all that money, Dolly never once tried to make it about herself. Not once. She always said Whitney did it justice. She took it and made it hers. She talked about how Whitney took the song to a place she herself had never taken it. She made it soar in a whole new way. That kind of praise can only come from somebody who is completely secure in who they are and what they've done. And then Dolly did something that most people didn't even know about. She took part of the money she earned from Whitney's version and invested it in a predominantly black community in Nashville. She bought property there. She helped revitalize the area. And when people asked her why, she said, I just thought, this is great. I'm going to be down here with her people, who were my people too. And I just love the fact that I spent that money on a complex, and I think, this is the house that Whitney built. Now, the way Dolly first heard Whitney's version is pure Dolly. She was driving home from her office in Nashville, riding along in her Cadillac with the radio playing low. And suddenly, something familiar came on. She didn't recognize it at first, not really, but something made her turn the volume up. Then she heard those opening lines, and it hit her. That was her song. She pulled the car over to the side of the road, right there on the highway, because the emotion was just too much. She sat there and listened to the whole thing. By the end, she was crying so hard she knew she'd have a wreck if she kept driving. She later said that she was overwhelmed by how beautiful it was. Her words, sung with that kind of power and heart. And that right there is the moment when A Little Country Goodbye turned into a worldwide anthem. And once that Whitney wave rolled across the world, it didn't wash Dolly away. It lifted her higher than ever. The 1990s turned into one long, rich, full season of work, creativity, and connection for her. And she didn't waste a single minute of it. Now back to the 90s. The decade opened with Dolly already moving at full speed. On January 1st, 1990, she popped up on the hit television show Designing Women in the episode called The First Day of the Last Decade of the Entire 20th Century, playing Charlene's so-called guardian movie star, a fun little nod to her Still Magnolias fame. That same year, she performed He's Alive on the GMA Awards after delivering a powerful version of it on the 1989 CMA Awards. Both performances featured the Christchurch Choir, and if you've never seen those recordings, you really need to look them up and see them for yourself. They'll lift you right out of your seat. She also joined Kenny Rogers on tour again in 1990, reminding the world just how much magic lived between the two of them when they shared a stage. And, as if all that weren't enough, Carson Newman College honored her with an honorary doctorate that same year, not because of how famous she was, but because of how much she had given back through her music and her heart. Now, in 1991, while much of the world was watching Operation Desert Storm unfold on television, Dolly was out there performing for the U.S. troops through the USO, taking their songs to men and women who were far from home and needing something familiar to hold on to. That same year, she launched her Buddy program in the Sevier County school system, an initiative designed to fight dropout rates by pairing students with mentors and giving them real encouragement. That wasn't some flashy publicity move. That was Dolly doing what she always does, seeing a need and quietly stepping in. By 1993, Dolly was back on the movie screen in a way folks didn't quite expect. In Straight Talk, she played a woman who accidentally becomes a radiotherapist. And if you've ever seen that film, you know it's got more heart and humor than it ever got credit for. It's one of those hidden gems in her career that just keeps getting better with time. That same year, she appeared as herself in the Beverly Hillbillies movie, singing If You Ain't Got Love at Jed Clampett's birthday party. And she released the album Honky Tonk Angels with Loretta Lynn and Tammy Wynette, three giants of country music standing shoulder to shoulder. And right around that time, Dolly and James Ingram were nominated for an Academy Award for the Best Original Song for their duet, The Day I Fall in Love, from Beethoven's Second. Just imagine that. A woman who once wrote songs in a little cabin in the Smokies, now standing in the same conversation as Hollywood's biggest composers. All through the 1990s, Dolly was everywhere on the talk shows. Letterman, Carson, Regis and Kathy Lee, Joan Rivers, Donnie and Marie. Show after show, stage after stage, always showing up as herself. Funny, kind, quick-witted, and completely unpretentious. In 1994, she shared her life in print with My Life and Other Unfinished Business, a HarperCollins autobiography that pulled back the curtain on the triumphs and the tears alike. Then, in '96, came Treasures, one of my most beloved albums of Dolly's. In the movie, Unlikely Angel, another reminder that Dolly could bring warmth to any screen she stepped onto. She joined Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt for the stunning collaboration that earned them a Grammy for the Best Country Collaboration with Vocals for the song After the Gold Rush, three voices blended like they were made for one another. Then, in 1998, Dolly did something that only a true artist does when the world starts getting too loud. She went back to the quiet. She retreated to her cabin, fasted for 3 weeks, and wrote the songs that would become Hungry Again, an album that took her straight back to her roots. By 1999, she was voicing herself on an episode of The Simpsons, being inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, and starring in Blue Valley Songbird. The 20th century closed with Dolly Parton standing exactly where she belonged, at the very heart of American music. And when the new millennium came rolling in, she didn't slow down a bit. She released Little Sparrow and Halos and Horns, both rooted in bluegrass and tradition. In 2001, she was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. In 2004, the Library of Congress named her a living legend. In 2005, she earned another Academy Award nomination and a Grammy nomination for Traveling Through. In 2006, she stood on the stage at the Kennedy Center being honored for a lifetime of her work. Then, in 2009, 9 to 5, the musical, opened on Broadway to much acclaim, earning her a Tony nomination for the Best Original Score. A few years later came the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, the Better Day World Tour, and the film Joyful Noise alongside Queen Latifah. Then, NBC brought her childhood to life in 2 movies, the first being Coat of Many Colors, and the second, Christmas of Many Colors, Circle of Love. And through it all, Dolly kept right on creating, touring, and giving. And just when it looked like Dolly had already given the world everything a person could give through songs and movies and stages, she went and gave something even bigger, something quieter, deeper, and far more lasting. Back in 1995, right in the middle of all that fame and touring and television, Dolly started something she never once tried to brand or glamorize. She called it the Imagination Library, and she started it in honor of her daddy, the man who never learned to read. That single truth sat in her heart like a stone. She knew what it meant to grow up without books, and she knew what it meant when someone finally puts one in your hands. She stated she often wondered what more her daddy could have accomplished in his life if he only knew how to read, since he truly was one of the smartest men she ever knew. So she made a promise. Every child enrolled would receive a free book every month from birth until age 5. Not just a pamphlet, not a worksheet, a real book. Dolly said, "If you can read, you can do anything, dream anything, be anything." And what started in one small corner of East Tennessee spread across the United States and then across the world. By now, hundreds of millions of books have been mailed into children's homes, quietly, steadily, without Dolly ever standing up and asking for applause. Later she said, "I don't want to be remembered for rhinestones. I want to be remembered for helping people." And that wasn't just a pretty quote, it was a blueprint. When wildfires tore through the Smoky Mountains in 2016, destroying homes, cars, and whole lives, Dolly stepped in with her My People Fund, giving monthly payments of $1,000 to families who had lost everything. Her generosity lit a spark that brought in more support from celebrities, companies, and private donors. Then, when the pandemic shook the whole world, Dolly quietly donated $1 million to medical research. When somebody asked her about it, she just shrugged and said, "I'm just trying to do my part." That's the thing about Dolly. Her generosity never comes with a sermon. And somehow, in the middle of all that, she stayed more relevant than ever. She didn't chase trends, she just stayed curious. Young artists from every genre, pop, rock, hip hop, country, reached for her. She collaborated with Miley Cyrus, Linda Perry, Brandy Carlisle, Pitbull, and so many more. She once said, "I like to know what's going on. You can learn something from everybody." And folks, as of this recording, she holds 11, yes, 11 Guinness World Records, including being the artist with the most decades having a top 20 hit on the Billboard charts. That kind of staying power doesn't come from marketing, it comes from heart. In 2022, she was nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and true to form, Dolly tried to bow out. She said she didn't feel like she had earned it. But when she was inducted, she stood on that stage and said, "I'm going to accept it gracefully, and I'll try to live up to it." Then she went and released a rock album, because that's just how she rolls. Through all of it, one thing never changed: her love for Carl Dean. Nearly 60 years of marriage, lived mostly out of the spotlight because that's how he wanted it. Dolly once said, "He's always been my biggest supporter, just from a distance." When Carl passed away in March of 2025, the world lost a quiet, steady love story that had outlasted every Hollywood statistic. Even now, Dolly hasn't stopped. She's still writing, still producing, still dreaming. She's released beautiful coffee table books like Behind the Scenes and Star of the Show. Also, in 2026, she has lent her voice to narrate the short film Tennessee, the Original Frontier, for America's 250th anniversary celebrations. What an honor that is. And she has said that in this final chapter of her life, she wants to glorify God and lift people up in everything she does. She never plans to retire. She once said, "I'll be making records if I have to sell them out of the trunk of my car." And now she doesn't have to. She's got her own record label, Dolly Records. And that, friends, is why Dolly belongs to everybody. From a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains to the biggest stages in the world, without ever losing her soul. And if that porch light feels warm tonight, that's probably Dolly's doing. Well, friends, that concludes this 3-part series, Dolly at 80, Her Life and Career. I sincerely appreciate you listening. Please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, where I create content surrounding the Southern life. It really helps me out. Until next time, be blessed.